We are commencing legal action against Mrs. Meghan Markle. Her televised allegations, particularly the Oprah interview, have inflicted undue harm upon the royal family. An apology no longer suffices. The matter will now proceed through the...
The shock did not come with a public speech, a palace balcony, or a royal announcement dressed in ceremony. It arrived quietly, through a sealed administrative order placed on a polished desk, carrying the kind of power that could erase years of royal identity in a single sentence. By the time Meghan understood what William had done, the decision had already moved beyond emotion and into history. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. Meghan read the notice once, then again, as if the second reading might soften the words. It did not. The language stayed calm, almost cruel in its restraint, and that calmness made the blow harder. A royal patronage, meaning an official relationship where a royal figure supports a charity, organization, or public cause, had always carried more than ceremony. It carried permission. It told the public, who still spoke with royal weight. William had quietly authorized the removal of every remaining patronage link connected to her name, and oversight had been transferred to working royals approved by the palace. No warning softened it. Harry watched her face change before she said a word. He knew that look because he had seen the palace wound her before. But this was different. This was not an argument in the press, or a cold family silence after another broken conversation. This was official. Final. Meghan placed the document down with care, and that small gesture carried the weight of defeat she refused to speak aloud. Those remaining patronages had become symbolic battlegrounds because they proved that her service had not been completely erased. To lose them meant losing the last formal bridge between the life she once lived and the woman the institution now seemed ready to leave behind. William had framed the decision as protection. The prince had been tightening control because he believed public credibility depended on clear lines between working royals and those outside the official circle. He saw divided representation as danger, especially when every royal connection could become a headline or a test of loyalty. Yet the order's cold wording revealed something more painful than strategy. It carried his approval without his voice, his authority without his emotion, and his message without a personal sentence. Meghan understood that silence. Harry understood it too. Someone inside the palace had helped the future king move quietly, and whoever guided the paperwork knew exactly how deep the cut would go. But before the order could wound Meghan, it had to pass through the hands of people who knew exactly what this would mean to her. Every royal rupture has faces behind it, and this one carried more than signatures and seals. It carried William's cold determination, Meghan's stunned disbelief, Harry's familiar anger, and Charles's weary fear that the family was once again standing on the edge of a public fracture. No one in that private circle could pretend this was only paperwork. It was personal. William understood the power of patronages in a way few outside the palace ever could. To the public, they looked like honorable links to charities and causes, but inside the royal machine, they were something far heavier. They were marks of trust. They told the country who represented the crown, who carried its voice, and who stood close enough to the institution to be seen as part of its living purpose. The prince had begun treating those roles not as sentimental leftovers from the past, but as duties that had to be guarded. And Meghan, even from a distance, still saw those final connections as proof that her work had not been erased from royal memory. Meghan sat with the document in front of her, one hand resting near the page but refusing to touch it again. The words had already done their damage. She did not need to read them a third time. The notice had reduced years of speeches, visits, promises, and public emotion into a clean administrative decision. Harry began pacing nearby, his anger building with every step. He was not shocked that the palace could be cold. He had expected coldness. What wounded him was the source. William had not merely approved a reshuffle. The future king had crossed into the last space Harry believed should have remained protected. Meghan's connection to the causes she once carried with pride. Charles received the briefing after the decision was already in motion, and his silence said more than any protest could have. The king knew what this meant. He knew how the family would read it, how the public would judge it, and how Harry would take it as one more locked door. Yet he also knew that William was no longer waiting for permission in the same way. The monarchy was shifting beneath the monarch himself, and that quiet fact carried its own danger. Catherine's name then entered the crisis with careful force. Some of the patronages were expected to pass through her office, making her more than a distant observer. She became part of the emotional transfer, the figure standing where Meghan's name had been removed. Success for the Wales household now came wrapped in another woman's humiliation, and that contrast made the decision even sharper. As each name took its place in the unfolding crisis, the story begins moving backward toward the hidden moment that made this decision inevitable. And buried beneath the official order was a private trigger that no one in the family could forget. The decision did not begin on the day Meghan opened the document. It began months earlier, during a private patronage reception at Windsor, when one sentence, spoken in a room filled with restrained smiles, turned into the moment William would later remember as the point of no return. Everyone moved on that evening, but the future king did not. William had already been hearing the same warning from advisors for weeks. The monarchy could not keep living in a gray area. Meghan's name still carried royal weight in certain patronage circles, and that unsettled the people responsible for protecting the crown's image. A patronage, in plain terms, is a royal link to a charity or public cause, and inside the palace, that link is never treated as decoration. It tells the world who is trusted to represent royal duty. The problem was simple, but dangerous. Meghan was no longer a working royal, yet her name still appeared close enough to active royal service to confuse donors, supporters, and palace officials who wanted clean lines. Meghan had not seen it that way. To her, those remaining links were not weapons against the family. They were proof that part of her old life had meaning beyond conflict. She believed the causes mattered, and she believed the work she had done for them should not be treated like a mistake. That belief made the wound deeper when whispers from Windsor reached her. She heard that her name had created tension at a reception, and the news hit her with quiet force. She had not written the program, she had not arranged the seating, yet somehow, her visibility had become another reason for the palace to pull away. William resisted at first, because he understood the danger of timing. The prince knew that a sudden removal would not look like order, it would look like punishment. So he waited, watched, and let the unease build behind closed doors. Then came the booklet. At the Windsor patronage reception, Meghan's name appeared beside active royal representatives in a tribute program, and guests began asking whether she still held a formal role. That small printed detail turned into a royal alarm bell. Later, William confronted a senior aide in private, tapping the booklet with one finger and asking how a non-working royal still carried palace weight in public-facing material. The aide had no answer strong enough to calm him. Within days, a memo was produced recommending a complete patronage clarification, a dry phrase with devastating meaning. It became the quiet blueprint for everything that followed. That single booklet becomes the spark, but the fire does not fully ignite until William chooses confrontation over delay. When the private warnings failed to settle the matter, the family was pulled toward the conversation everyone had tried to avoid. There are conversations that end arguments, and there are conversations that end eras. When William and Harry faced each other behind closed doors, the patronage order was no longer an administrative decision. It became a test of brotherhood, loyalty, grief, and power. No cameras were present. No aides softened the words. Only two brothers remained, carrying everything they had lost. Harry arrived carrying more than anger. He carried Meghan's silence, the sharp stillness that had followed the notice, and the painful knowledge that she had been removed without a final conversation. William stood on the other side of the room, with the authority of a future king, but also with the burden of a brother who knew exactly where the wound would land. A patronage order, meaning an official palace instruction changing who represents royal causes, should have been handled like a clean administrative file. But this one had become a family reckoning. Harry did not see a file. He saw a door slammed in his wife's face. Harry placed the document on the table and asked the question that cut through every careful palace phrase. Did William want Meghan removed from service, or removed from memory. The words hung there because both brothers understood the difference. Service could be reassigned. Memory could not. Meghan's name had been stripped from the remaining links that still tied her to royal duty, and Harry believed that was not just discipline, it was erasure. William did not raise his voice. That made his answer colder. The prince said patronages belonged to duty, not identity, and the monarchy could not keep carrying divided loyalties forever. Harry heard the sentence as a verdict. He reminded William that Meghan had stood for those causes before the bitterness became public, before every act of royal life was measured like a betrayal. William answered that the crown could not be built on emotional exceptions. The future king believed public trust depended on clean lines, and clean lines demanded painful choices. That was where the clash turned brutal. One brother spoke as a husband defending dignity. The other spoke as an heir protecting the institution. Neither role left much room for mercy. William then revealed the part Harry had not known. The order had been prepared for weeks, not days, weeks. That single detail changed the entire room. Harry realized the appeals had already been bypassed, the calls already made useless, the emotional arguments already defeated, before he even knew there was a battle to fight. Meghan had opened a decision, not a warning. Harry had rushed toward a confrontation that the palace machinery had already survived in silence. William looked shaken, but he did not retreat. Harry looked wounded, but he did not surrender. The confrontation left both brothers carrying a deeper fracture than before, because now they understood that this was not just about Meghan's patronages. It was about who controlled the future, who got left behind, and who had the power to decide when family feeling no longer mattered. The real force behind William's decision was still hidden in the machinery of royal power. And behind that closed door stood a system built to make one man's quiet decision impossible to reverse. I want you to write a detailed script based on the outline I provide for a royal monarchy using a bold, dramatic, and immersive storytelling approach. The script should be structured according to the provided subheading, ensuring that each section builds upon the previous one without abrupt endings or disconnections. The script must maintain a smooth, continuous narrative flow rather than feeling segmented, and follow the words count length mentioned with each outline. Write in a paragraph format. Hook and transition lines will be same as it. Tone and style. The script should have a bold, cinematic, and suspenseful tone to keep the audience engaged. The storytelling should be narrative-driven, focusing on mystery, foreshadowing, and emotional highs and lows. Avoid a dry biographical format. The script should feel like an investigative and shocking exposé. No visual descriptions, scene instructions, or visual storytelling elements. This should be purely narrative. Use a mix of short and long sentences to control pacing and enhance drama. Engagement techniques that must be used. Cliffhangers and foreshadowing must be incorporated to build suspense. Ensure the script remains emotional and immersive, making the audience feel the struggles, triumphs, and betrayals. No standalone endings in any section. Each section should naturally flow into the next subheading without abrupt conclusions. Use bold and dramatic phrasing to emphasize key moments, struggles, and turning points. Highlight the contrast between success and suffering, making the story compelling. Section breakdown and storytelling approach. Each section must maintain a smooth transition, ensuring a continuous flow of storytelling. The narrative should be engaging, avoiding unnecessary factual overload. Avoid listing events mechanically. Each event must be woven into the broader arc of their journey. The script should not reset at each subheading, but carry the momentum forward, ensuring previous and next subheadings remain connected. Language and accessibility. Use simple yet powerful language that is accessible to a broad audience. Maintain a storytelling approach, so the script should feel like a dramatic retelling rather than an encyclopedia entry. Avoid formal or academic tones, but the language should feel conversational and immersive. Ensure vivid descriptions through strong word choice, rather than relying on visual cues or direct scene instructions. Insert subheading here. Word count, 445 words. Tone and style. Sad, intimate, dramatic, emotionally heavy. Hook. For Meghan, the harshest part was not the removal itself. It was the quietness of it. no final conversation, no warning delivered with dignity, no chance to defend the meaning she had attached to those causes. In one private moment, the last official traces of her royal service were folded into someone else's future, and she was left holding the absence. Key points. Context/background. Show Meghan reviewing the list of transferred patronages and realizing each name represents a door that has now closed. Context/background. Explain that these roles mattered because they connected her public identity to service, not just status. Emotional conflict. Meghan sits with Harry and says the palace did not just take titles from her life, it took the causes she believed still carried her imprint. Emotional conflict. Harry's anger softens into helplessness as he realizes he cannot restore what William has formally removed. Suspense/revelation. Meghan notices one patronage was reassigned before she received her notice, proving the palace had already begun acting before informing her. Suspense/revelation. A private call from an old supporter ends awkwardly when the supporter admits they have been told all future contact must go through the Wales office. Forward hint. Yet from the sadness comes an unexpected shift. Meghan decides she will not beg for restoration. Transition line. And in that refusal to plead, the balance of the story begins to change. ACT 3. Resolution. Generate a detailed documentary-style script based on the provided outline and subheading. Maintain a bold, dramatic, and engaging storytelling approach with smooth transitions between sections. Avoid word repetition and ensure each section flows naturally into the next. Avoid adding outline headings. Just write the script and follow the words count length given along with each outline above. For Meghan, the harshest part was not the removal itself. It was the quietness of it. No final conversation, no warning delivered with dignity, no chance to defend the meaning she had attached to those causes. In one private moment, the last official traces of her royal service were folded into someone else's future, and she was left holding the absence. Meghan reviewed the list slowly, and every name seemed to carry a different kind of loss. These were not just formal assignments written in palace language. They were causes, rooms, speeches, promises, and people who had once looked to her as a voice of support. A patronage, in simple terms, is an official royal connection to a charity or public organization, and for Meghan, those links had always meant service, not just status. That was why the removal cut so deeply. The palace had not only changed a list, it had changed the meaning of her past. Harry sat with her as the silence grew heavier. Meghan finally said what the document had made impossible to ignore. The palace had not just taken titles from her life, it had taken the causes she believed still carried her imprint. Harry's anger, so sharp only moments earlier, began to soften into something worse: helplessness. He could rage against William, blame the future king, and condemn the coldness of the process, but he could not restore what had been formally removed. The decision had passed through offices, signatures, and approvals. It had become stronger than outrage. Meghan then noticed the detail that changed her sadness into disbelief. One patronage had already been reassigned before she received the notice. That meant the palace had not waited for her reaction. It had not paused for courtesy. It had already begun acting as though her connection was finished, while she still believed there was something left to defend. The discovery landed like a second blow. Harry understood it too. This was not a door being closed in front of them. It had been closed earlier, quietly, while they were still standing outside asking to be heard. A private call from an old supporter made the wound even clearer. The supporter, careful and uncomfortable, admitted they had been told that all future contact must go through the Wales office. Meghan did not break. She listened. She thanked them. But after the call ended, the meaning was impossible to escape. Catherine's office was now the official path forward, and Meghan's name had been moved out of the channel completely. Success for the Wales household had become suffering for her, and the contrast was brutal. Meghan could have begged. She could have demanded a review, sent letters, forced statements, and pulled the family back into public war. But something shifted inside her. Pain did not disappear, yet it hardened into resolve. She decided she would not ask the palace to return what it had chosen to take. She would not plead for a place in a structure that had erased her with such calm precision. And in that refusal to plead, the balance of the story begins to change. The turning point did not come through fury, it came through stillness. After the calls ended and the documents were put away, Meghan and Harry found themselves in a rare silence where anger had nothing left to say. There were no aides, no lawyers, no palace messengers between them. Only the question of what remained when royal recognition disappeared. Meghan understood the trap hidden inside the palace's decision. If she fought publicly, William's order would become the center of her story. Every headline would return to what the prince had taken, every debate would measure her worth against what the crown had removed, and every response would pull her back toward the institution that had already decided she no longer belonged inside its official circle. A formal appeal, meaning an official request asking the palace to review or reverse the decision, might have created noise, but it would not guarantee dignity. It could keep the wound alive longer. Harry felt that truth before he accepted it. He wanted action. He wanted a challenge. He wanted someone inside the family to admit that the final cut had been handled with unnecessary coldness. But then he looked at Meghan and saw that her strength no longer needed an argument to prove itself. His anger slowed. His voice changed. He apologized for not being able to shield her from the last blow, and for a moment, the husband replaced the prince. He was not defending a title now. He was grieving what the palace had done to the woman beside him. Meghan did not answer with blame. That made the moment more powerful. She told Harry that the palace could remove her name from papers, lists, and offices, but it could not decide whether her service had been real. Those words carried exhausted honesty, not triumph. She knew the loss still hurt. She knew Catherine's office would now be treated as the official path forward. She knew William's decision had redrawn the map of royal belonging. But she also understood something the palace had not expected. Refusing to beg could become its own form of control. Harry agreed slowly, though every part of him resisted the surrender. To him, stepping back felt like letting William win. To Meghan, chasing restoration would be worse. It would mean asking the same institution that rejected her to confirm her value. The prince could not undo the order. Charles had not stopped it. The machinery had moved. So Meghan chose the one thing left in her hands. She stepped away from a formal appeal and denied the palace the drawn-out battle it may have expected. That decision shifted the emotional power of the story. William had stripped the patronages, but Meghan refused to let the removal become her identity. Harry saw it then. Her dignity now depended on not chasing the door that had closed. Their private resolve soon collides with a public storm, as the world wakes up to the full meaning of William's decision. By morning, the quiet order was no longer hidden inside palace files. It was written across the public imagination. The palace had moved quietly, but the world did not receive it quietly. Once the patronage removals became public, every newspaper, broadcast desk, and royal commentator understood the symbolism immediately. This was not a reshuffle. It was a royal severing. Meghan had not simply lost roles, she had been removed from the last official language that tied her to palace service. William's decision now belonged to the public, and the reaction split almost instantly. Some saw the prince as disciplined, firm, and ready to draw the lines a future king would need. Others saw something colder, a personal strike wrapped in official wording, a family wound turned into policy. Palace communications tried to call it a routine clarification of working royal responsibilities. In plain language, that meant only royals actively serving the crown would continue holding official links to public causes. But the explanation could not erase the emotional force of the timing. Meghan's name was gone, and everyone understood what that meant. A London newspaper captured the feeling with brutal simplicity. Its front page read, "The Final Cut," placing Meghan's image beside a list of reassigned patronages. The phrase spread faster than the palace statement. It gave the story a shape people could repeat, argue over, and remember. Meghan saw the headline and closed the tablet without speaking. She refused to let public humiliation become the final image of her day. But the silence around her carried everything she did not say. The palace had not just moved her out of official service. It had allowed the world to watch the last thread snap. William watched the coverage too, tense but composed. The future king knew the decision had now become part of his public reputation. For supporters, he looked strong. For critics, he looked unforgiving. Yet the prince did not retreat from the meaning of the order. He had accepted the cost before the public ever saw the headline. The monarchy he wanted to protect would not survive, in his mind, by leaving blurred connections in place. It would survive by deciding who stood inside the circle and who did not. That certainty gave him power, but it also made him harder to reach. A broadcaster described the removal as the clearest sign yet that the future reign will draw hard lines. And that single sentence turned the private order into a national debate. Meghan became the symbol of exclusion. William became the symbol of control. Harry became the husband watching the institution close ranks against the woman he had promised to defend. Charles, quiet behind the machinery, became the monarch who had allowed the shift to happen under his reign. But beyond the headlines, the deeper verdict rests not in public noise, but in what the decision revealed about the monarchy's future. When the shouting faded, one truth remained standing. This was the moment the monarchy chose clarity over reconciliation. In the end, Meghan's loss was not measured only in patronage lists or palace records. It was measured in the silence after the final door closed. William had made the kind of decision future kings are remembered for: cold, strategic, and impossible to misunderstand. Meghan had been blindsided, but not broken. The monarchy had chosen its line, and everyone now knew where they stood. Meghan understood that the battle had ended without a public surrender. She did not step forward with a plea, and she did not ask the palace to return what it had already placed beyond her reach. A royal patronage, in plain language, is an official connection between a royal figure and a charity, cause, or public organization, and those final links had once allowed her name to remain tied to service. William's action formally ended that connection. The prince had not only removed her from a list, he had removed the last official language that kept her close to royal duty. Harry felt the meaning settle in a way anger could no longer change. He had believed, even after everything, that some small bridge might remain between Meghan and the institution that once celebrated her arrival. Now he accepted a harder truth. The family divide had entered a new stage, one where emotional appeals no longer changed institutional outcomes. The crown had chosen a structure for the future. Only working royals would carry active patronage authority, and anyone outside that circle would no longer hold symbolic power through royal causes. That clarity protected the palace, but it deepened the wound. William emerged from the storm carrying the weight of criticism, yet he did not bend. The future king had shown that he was willing to absorb public anger if it protected the boundaries he believed the crown needed. To supporters, that looked like discipline. To critics, it looked like coldness. But either way, the message could not be mistaken. His monarchy would not be shaped by old emotional ties. It would be shaped by control, duty, and hard lines that even family could not cross. Charles remained with the quiet sorrow of a father who had watched the final patronage bridge collapse. The king understood that hesitation had given way to William's harder era, and that the monarchy was now moving toward a future less guided by repair than by order. Meghan's royal chapter had been officially closed. Harry's hope of symbolic healing had faded, and the prince had begun defining his future reign through discipline, not sentiment. And with that, the final patronage was no longer a title beside Meghan's name. It became the symbol of a royal life that had ended, a future king who had chosen control, and a monarchy that had finally closed the door. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.